Good evening and welcome to the Town of Derry Planning Board meeting for September 6, 2023. We start our meetings with a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Planning Board continues to offer remote participation for members of the public as well as board members. To attend this meeting on video using a computer or a smart device, go to www.zoom.us and enter the meeting ID 754-663-912. If you are attending by telephone, the phone numbers are area code 646-558-8656 or 312-626-6799. And again, you enter the same meeting ID, 754-663-912. If you have problems, you can call the helpline at 603-845-5585. If you're joining by phone, you use the *6 to unmute yourself when you're recognized, and the *9 to raise your hand to be recognized. At this point, I will introduce the staff and members present this evening. To our far right is Mr. George Seuras, Planning Director.
Good evening.
Behind her is Lisa Caravello, our new Planning Clerk.
Good evening.
Member Mr. Healy.
Good evening.
Member Mr. McEachran.
Good evening.
And to the far left is Owen Preventure, who is running all the AV for us tonight.
Good evening.
Mr. Mark LaRue, our engineering representative.
Good evening.
Mr. O'Connors.
Good evening.
Mr. Malaby.
Good evening.
Secretary, Mr. Myers.
Good evening.
And I'm Dave Nelson. I'm acting as Chair Pro Tem this evening. First thing on our agenda is escrow. I don't think we have any, correct? No escrow. So next would be approval of minutes for August 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. McCracken, second by Mr. Healy to approve as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, so all the abstentions, raise their hands so the clerk can get your name. So Mr. Connors, Mr. Myers, Mr. McEachran.
I'm gonna have to vote yes, so you have a majority.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's 3-3, and it won't pass. I will speak for Mr. Granessi and vote yes.
Great. So those minutes are approved. Correspondence, I think that is also empty tonight, right?
It's empty.
Great.
Sorry. Good job, Andy.
Other business, we have a first reading of proposed amendments to our policies and procedures regarding to some changes mandated by changes to state law, and I will ask Mr. Seuras to review that for us.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just as you said, it's only the first reading. You'll do the second reading at the meeting on September 20th, but if you just go to page 4 at the bottom, you'll see what we added for the annual meeting. Just for the record, it says, at the annual meeting, the planning board shall review any non-public minutes to determine if the minutes should continue to be withheld from public disclosure. Any minutes deemed appropriate to be released to the public shall be posted publicly with a date of the board's determination noted and a copy of the minutes provided to the town clerk, noting the minutes are now public. And then if you go to page 14, the last page, if you approve the minutes, the policy change in the next meeting, then we'll add that to the last section, as you see highlighted in blue. So you don't need to vote tonight. Just if you have any other comments, just forward it to Liz, Habit, George, or Lisa. Thank you.
So any comments or questions from members of the board on this tonight?
Yeah, I have a question.
Mr.
So
Healy.
at the last meeting, there were a few sets of minutes that we needed to review. Do we know when we're doing that?
Tonight.
Tonight, okay.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Next item of other business, Mr. Healy, is review of non-public minutes. So according to the new policy, every 10 years we need to review these, and we've got some that are over 10 years old. So they were distributed to everyone in your packets. There is a series of motions, either to keep them sealed or to make them public, and we should probably deal with each one independently.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, for Dan. They're in the back of your packet, so just go to the last, in your packet, just go to the last handout, and that's where they are. I apologize for that. They're not in order.
I did make some notes this afternoon, which may help folks in reviewing them. And I specifically noted under which section of RSA 91A the exclusion was made, which may help some folks in deciding whether they need to be made public or made, continue to be sealed. So shall we take these up in the order they were in the packet? So the first one
Yep.
is the non-public minutes of February 3rd, 2010. That was convened under RSA 91A3, discussion of attorney-client privilege material.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to keep the non-public minutes for February 3rd, 2010 sealed pursuant to RSA 91A34B as circumstances that justify keeping the minutes from the public under RSA 91A33 still apply.
Do we have a second?
So can I ask just a question on this whole situation? Like sealing and unsealing?
Sure.
So I guess, and especially attorney-client privilege, I guess what I'm thinking, it makes sense oftentimes at a certain time, given property acquisitions or things that are going on, for things to be sealed and for attorney-client privilege, because it could affect a land purchase or some sort of a job. It seems to me that this RSA is saying after the fact, once that's done, there's no reason necessarily to keep that from the public. Is that kind of the idea here? And if so, even attorney-client privilege type stuff, once the case or item has been resolved, to me, it would be in the public interest for them to see what went on, I guess, to keep boards honest and that sort of thing. So is that kind of the idea here?
I believe the intent of the legislation is as you say, once the purpose for the exclusion for public publishing of minutes has lapsed and is no longer germane, that boards ought to review them and potentially make them public if it's no longer serving a valid purpose. There are a number of exceptions. RSA 91A is 15 pages long. And so some of those may have time expirations and some of them may not. I'm going to suggest that some of the ones that have logical time expirations might be discussion of the purchase and sale of a piece of property. At a certain point in time, the property is either purchased and then it's no longer germane to keep it private, or they moved on and it was never purchased. So in those cases, things would expire. The other case that might expire is if your discussion of settlement of pending litigation. My interpretation is that once the litigation is finally settled and the court decision is rendered, then it's kind of moot to keep them private because all of that was in the court record anyway. Other things, such as just consultation with legal counsel about strategy, may not be something that ever has to be made public. So it really depends upon which section of the law it was taken under and what has happened in the interim.
So I guess where I was going with that is, as I read these, I guess, especially like 2010, Mr. Stenhouse, stuff that's way back when, to me, we would unseal that stuff. But I was wondering, should we be getting a legal opinion on these from our lawyer before we vote to unseal something in case there is some legal impact that we're not thinking about, I guess is my point. For us to sit up here as a board and just decide to unseal things or not unseal things, I'm a little concerned about that. As I read through it, a lot of this is like, yeah, unseal it. It's 10 years old. What's the problem? But
Well, we have we have a motion. We don't have a second. So
Okay, sorry.
we're now into
I wanna
discussion. Maybe we should
second
have
it.
someone second it so we can discuss.
okay, sorry.
So,
I thought we were talking about one specific one already and.
well, we're
moving-
going to go through all of them, one
Okay.
by one.
All right.
So further questions or discussions on this motion?
And the motion was to not unseal, I think, right?
Keep them sealed.
Keep them sealed.
I have a question. I'm all for open government. Anybody that knows me knows that. Could we take this out of the hypothetical and figure out exactly what it is we're voting on, which specific item?
We're voting on
February.
keeping February 3rd, 2010 sealed.
I understand that. Beyond that, what's the issue? What are we closing or not closing? What's the issue?
I think we need to go into non-public ourselves to kind of discuss that, because you're voting,
fine.
yeah, you
We
can't
have to.
really discuss it.
It can't be discussed in public. 'Cause it's
But we
still
have
sealed.
them here in the packet.
I
I
understand that.
understand that, and we're having a
Cannot
cross discussion
discuss
here,
it.
but I can't vote on something unless I know what I'm voting on.
Did you read the stuff that was in the
Yes.
packet?
I did.
And that's all I got, so I don't really know what the backstory was. So if we need more information, then we may have to,
You would literally have had to have been on the board in 2010 to hear exactly what went on. Remember,
Right.
these are minutes from a non-public meeting, which are typically and purposefully somewhat vague unless you're
Right.
actually in the meeting.
And Dave,
Right.
and Dave Granessi was the one who was the biggest advocate for keeping them sealed. So I'd like to have Dave here Mr. Granessi to hear what he has to say.
I mean, if something's sealed historically, my personal preference is to keep it sealed. If, as Mr. Nelson, and we may disagree on this, when it comes to a court case and the court case is done, you have enough of the records right there. You don't need to get your non-public minutes.
I respect everything that you said, but if you know me, you know that I'm for open
understand that.
government, and I would just, the burden is on somebody that wants to close things to me. I would open everything up.
And that's
Unless
fine.
there's like a property issue or litigation, I certainly
And
understand
there
that.
could be personal information in some of these things that while it may not be relevant anymore, I don't
Right.
want to release anybody's personal information ever.
I don't know if I would go there. I wouldn't agree with you there, Jim, with all due respect.
That's, okay. No, I understand, Andy, but it's
so,
personal
Mr. Myers,
information.
one of the things that will happen as a result of the proposed amendment to the policies and procedures is we get a bite at this apple every year.
Good.
So to that point, I guess that's why I was trying to be careful. Like on this particular one, I didn't want to state what's in here about my opinion as to why this one, to me, doesn't seem like it needs to stay sealed. But to Dan's point, do we need to go into private in order, or
Yes.
non-public to talk about whether we're going to, so should we have when this comes up, and this is going to be done once a year, is that right, at an annual meeting? Is that what it's saying?
Well, from henceforth, we will do it at our annual
Okay.
meeting.
So should we have a scheduled non-public to go through all of these and say, we feel this one's good, this one's not, for these reasons, and that way when we come out in the public, we can just kind of discuss that and bing, bing, bing?
I think that might be more appropriate because your annual meeting is the first regular meeting in April after the elections and the appointments. So in April, you have your annual meeting, and you're going to vote to conclude what we talked about earlier, to include those minutes. So then you'll have a legal record saying, now you can do it. I mean, I have no issue if the board wants to indefinitely table these. If you want to wait till the annual meeting, that's an option. There's no,
My opinion would be to table it for tonight and then come up with a process. And like I say, I think we probably need to have a non-public so that we can discuss it amongst ourselves as to why should it or why should it not. And then also, we should perhaps have our legal counsel say in advance, we think these need to stay sealed because of X, Y, and Z. And that way we can, I think, move more efficiently through this. So that would be my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to withdraw my motion and start a new motion to table
All right.
until the annual meeting.
I'll second it.
I take that as a motion to table the entire agenda item.
Yep, until the annual meeting.
Okay.
can you, just for the record, yeah, okay, why don't we do that? Because we
And then you can get into all the other things and
yeah,
set
because
up a
I
meeting.
mean, I was here for
Set a
something, like
process,
Dan
yeah.
said, I can give you a little bit background, but it probably shouldn't be said in
Gotta do it
public.
non-public.
Because some of it is personal.
That's why, yeah, I feel like we can't discuss it in order to vote on it because we can't discuss it in public, so.
But that way, April 15th, it will be now be allowed under your procedures and stuff.
So I would just suggest a non-public, though, be scheduled
We have a
and
motion.
legal counsel prior to
There's a
that.
motion and a second on a non-debatable motion.
Okay,
We
so let's
can't
vote
debate
it.
Mr. McCaffrey is right. I will attempt to clarify the motion after we vote for it in good U.S. Congress style.
Here we go.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. McEachran?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you. And just for
What
the,
I would like to clarify is if we're going to have a non-public session to discuss it, and we're going to vote at the annual meeting where we potentially have new members, that kind of means we have to have the non-public session on the night
Right.
of the annual meeting, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Everyone's aware of that?
that's
Okay.
correct, yep. And we also have to, you have to put it on as an agenda item. So when you have your agenda, like tonight, you have to, the first thing on the item, you have to put per the RSA, non-public session. You can't just vote.
Just go into it,
and
yeah.
do it. So,
And should we, George, to my other point, prior to even that meeting, have the legal counsel go through this from a legal perspective, because you don't want to step
yeah,
on.
we can do that, no problem.
Anything that's coming up for unsealing probably needs to be reviewed by the lawyers, I
I
would
mean,
think.
this is the first time we've done it, because like, if you see the minutes of August 2nd, the state legislature changed that, and Dan's probably aware of some of that, but the state changed the bylaws back, the right-to-know law got changed in 2023, so we have to adhere to this right-to-know law change.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so it apparently was effective in July,
Yes.
but the copy that's actually on the general court's website doesn't include those changes yet. So-
That's not a surprise.
There we go.
Take some more.
All right, so moving on to the next item, we have to schedule a public hearing to discuss proposed changes to LDCR Section 17017 and Section 17056 to revise planning board application fees.
Mr. Chairman, I move to schedule a public hearing for Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, to discuss the proposed changes to the Land Development Control Regulation, Article 13, Application Approval Process, Section 17017, Fees and Costs, and Article 9, Application and Approval Process, Section 17056, Fees and Costs.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McEachran, seconded by Mr. Myers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Just
Any-
a discussion item? If you didn't ask for discussion on that? Is it?
Is it, sure, is there something to discuss about scheduling a public hearing?
Well, no, I guess there's specific language already strikeouts and things in here. I just didn't know if we were discussing that, but we can do that at the hearing, I guess.
Right, I
It was
think
just where those rates came, why those, where did the
that has been
increases come from?
before us before, though.
Yep. Okay.
So, that's all in favor? No one's said no? Right, good.
Yep.
Next item, schedule a public hearing to discuss proposed amendments to appendix to the Land Development Control Regulation, specifically the Project Development Security Workbook to revise how construction escrow is calculated.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to schedule a public hearing on Wednesday, September 20th, to discuss proposed changes to Land Development Control Regulation Appendix Development Project Security Workbook to revise how construction escrow is calculated.
Second.
So moved by Mr. McEachran, seconded by Mr. Myers. Any discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Mr. Ciros, do you have any planning director updates?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, boy.
We're good.
Okay.
Just be patient with staff for the next few weeks as we move along here.
So, as sort of a chairman update, if you need help, you can shout. 'cause
I appreciate that.
I'm here to come in and help you with whatever you need.
Okay, thank you, David. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
There you go, cool.
Next item is a public hearing for Family Promise of Southern New Hampshire, owner Derry Housing and Redevelopment Authority, parcel ID 36066, 12 Peabody Road, acceptance and review of a site plan determination, and I will turn it over to Mr. Ciros to introduce.
Yep. A couple of things, Mr. Chairman. I'll read for the record, and then I can introduce some of the presenters. As you know, the applicant is Family Promise, Southern New Hampshire. The property is located at 12 Peabody Road. This property is, for many years, for people who've been here a long time, many, many years ago, was Crutch and Mountain Rehab, and then it became Vintage Grace for several years. Vintage Grace is no longer there. If you drive by the property, you've seen it in disrepair, and it's vacant. So Family Promise of Southern New Hampshire is looking to move into that property. We spoke to our attorney, Bob Mackey, and myself. He felt that really this should come probably under what we call our minor site plan determination, that there's an internal change of use. The previous uses were also, I won't say similar, but they weren't housing in the traditional sense for vintage grades as well as Crotchet Mountain. So he felt that maybe we should present something to the planning board and let the abutters know what's going to be located in that building and have the site plan determination. So that's why they're here tonight. The intent of the project is to gut and renovate the existing building to provide 8 units of transitional housing. There are no additions proposed. The exterior will be addressed by providing new windows, siding, and trim. The property is located in the medium-high density residential district. If you know that street, it's surrounded by the nursing home. There's also condominiums, and then across the street, there's condominiums there as well. All town departments have reviewed and signed the plan with the exception of the police department. The police department has indicated that they will refrain from signing the plan set at this time until the board has further discussion regarding the waiver request for parking. I'll let the applicant detail that, go into more detail. You do see a memo to myself from Captain Michaud. Just wanted to have more detail on the parking requirements. There is a waiver request for the parking. I'll let the architect discuss that. Staff would recommend approval. I know I've talked to some of the abutters on the phone. I know there are some here, and I think they have some questions as well. But I will turn it over to Dennis Myers, who's the architect representing the applicant, and there's several board members, or board of directors here for questions as well. Dennis?
Good evening. Is this on? Yes. My name is Dennis Myers. Excuse me. I'm the architect working with Family Promise on this particular project. With me tonight is Mark Saragusa, board member of Family Promise. And I'd be happy to talk about the site plan, but maybe we ought to have Mark outline the program itself and the needs we're trying to meet with this particular project.
So Mark Saragusa, resident of Derry as well, 49 South Main Street, and operator of Westbrook Inn with my family on 28. So vice chair of the board at Family Promise. We also have several of our board members, our executive director, finance director here tonight. So we provide a few different services with Family Promise. We're currently based in Nashua with our primary facility for transitional housing. We converted an old school building, the old Infant Jesus School building on Crown Street there, and we now serve about 20 families in more of a dormitory style setting where each family has their own living unit with common kitchens, common dining areas, rec areas. There's staff offices, administrative offices, and each living unit has its own bathroom and shower as well. So it's a little different than a typical apartment unit, but our mission is really to end homelessness. We do that through the transitional housing model, where, again, it's more of a hands-on approach, and so we don't just kind of give people a bed and a meal. We're bringing them in. We have case managers on site. We have, again, finance and other staff. We provide homeownership education, financial literacy education. They have to go through full background checks to get into the program. And most of the families, which is a key component there, we don't take individuals. They are families, whether they're single parents or a couple in the facility with kids. Most of them end up spending about a year on site. Some graduate sooner, some graduate a little later. But the goal is to get them back on their feet, teach them everyday life skills that all of us really should have, whether homeownership, parenting, financial literacy, and we have about a 90% success rate that a year after leaving the facility, they're independently sustaining their own housing. So it's a success overall as an organization. We've seen that local communities like Derry, who Pam Wellman, our executive director, can speak more to. We've had a long relationship with both nonprofits, the Town of Derry, Alexander Eastman Foundation, Pinkerton Academy. The headmaster there, Tim Powers, is on our board. And then other communities in Hillsborough and Rockingham County have supported us throughout the years. So we're being approached by communities now to come into their communities to either purchase or win a bid for buildings to convert them into, again, more of this transitional housing structure, because as most people know, affordable housing, not only in the state of New Hampshire, but across the country, is a huge issue and growing issue. I think New Hampshire has at least 20,000 housing units in need, and we're seeing that in Derry already, new apartment developments coming in and being proposed. So the communities are seeing this, as I mentioned, the case management, home ownership, financial literacy, and more of that structure that these families need to get back on their feet. It's an attractive model, and really it's a unique model that most communities and nonprofits provide. So with that, I'll let Dennis speak to the site plan here, how we're doing, what we're looking at to purchase this building and convert it into the transitional model. Again, that dormitory style housing facility. One thing I want to note, so our other two programs or arms that we have within our organization is supportive housing, which is really, we're essentially subsidizing the rent to families. We're having somewhat of a master lease with the landlord at a discounted rate, and then the families are paying their own rent and living there independently. It's more of an apartment style living. And then we also have a diversion program where, say maybe the family doesn't qualify for our living facility. Maybe we'll redirect them or work with other organizations for them to be better suited in. So overall, we're working vertically as an organization to hopefully, if we intake them, whether it's through diversion or the transitional housing, and then they graduate to independent living and then so on to maybe buy a house or, be able to afford their own apartment. That's kind of the end goal for us as an organization. So I'll let Dennis speak more to this project and Derry here.
As Mr. Soros indicated, there are no additions to the building under this plan. We are planning what they call a gut renovation, which includes new windows, new siding, and new roofing as far as the exterior goes. And as far as the site plan goes, we are removing the existing shed that sits next to the dumpster in the site plan you see above. And we are overlaying the existing driveway system and restriping the paving to get adequately sized parking spaces in accordance with the ordinance. Now, our model includes 8 units. Each unit is 2 bedrooms, and as Mark indicated, each have an assigned bathroom, but the living, dining, kitchen is all common facilities. So historically, Family Promise has a record of approximately 1 car per unit. Here we have 8 units and 1 supervisor's apartment. So under your ordinance, we would need 24 spaces for the 8 units based on the bedroom count, and we're providing 14. And we feel it's adequate given the history of this kind of tenant and the success Family Promise has had with managing that. That leaves an extra 5 or 6 spaces, depending on the day, for support services to come in, which come in at various times during the day. So we feel we provide adequate parking for the use. And that's the waiver request we indicated for 170-63C.4.A, which is the parking waiver request. We also have a secondary waiver request because the police chief did not sign it until he hears the decision of the board on the parking issue. We'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's the basic approach to the program and the site.
Mr. Chairman, per our policy, I'd like to open a public hearing.
I think we got to accept jurisdiction,
sorry.
regional impact first, Jim.
My apologies.
Yep.
I've been off for a couple weeks. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to accept jurisdiction of the site plan determination before the Board for Family Promises of Southern New Hampshire, owner Derry Housing Authority, PID 36066, 12 Peabody Road.
Second. Moved by Mr. McCracken, seconded by Mr. Myers. Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. McEachran?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes?
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, and next, I'd like to do determination of regional impact pursuant to RSA 3656. The board finds proposal as presented at this time meets the definition of development regional impact. You would essentially vote no on this
Second.
if you don't feel it's
Okay,
impacting
motion
the
by
region.
Mr. McEachran, seconded by Mr. Myers.
Question?
Yes.
Discussion? I realize this isn't anywhere near a border or anything like that, but where it's transitional housing, is that considered for any kind of southern New Hampshire plan? Is there any regional impact because this is this special type of housing, George, or no? Okay.
Nope.
Thank
no,
you.
No problem.
Any other? Then we'll take the vote. Mr. Healy?
No, no regional impact.
Mr. McEachran?
No, I don't feel there's regional impact.
Mr. Connors?
Nope.
Mr. Malaby?
No regional impact.
Mr. Myers?
No regional impact.
And I will also vote no, no regional impact.
Mr. Chairman, my next motion will be to open the public hearing.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is open. Anyone who would like to address this plan, ask questions, make comments, please come forward. Identify yourself with name and address for the record.
You guys should probably
You
open
guys
those
will have to
seats up.
step down for a moment. You guys will have to step down and let other folks use the mics. Thank you. I would suggest that you take close notes, because after the public hearing, we're going to ask you to answer all the questions that everyone asked, okay? Thanks.
My name is Ken Rapson. I live at 14 Coburn Road, which is adjacent to the property that's in question. And one of the concerns that I have is the parking, as well as the chief of police has. You could have as many as 26 cars, and there's only room for 14. And 3 of those are only, based on what you have here, what I've got, are for compact vehicles. I just don't see how you feel that that's adequate for this type of property. And that's my concern.
Okay, thank you. We'll get answers for you once we close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Come forward.
Hi, my name is Michelle Pace. I live at 5 Hoodcroft Drive. I also have concerns over parking issues. I have a lot of issues with parents of Pinkerton that park up and down our road, on our properties, in our driveways. We have students who park in our yards, and it's been a struggle. And to add even more space where people don't have room to park, and they're just going to take up room all over our properties and our driveways, is not going to help the issue. And we don't get a lot of help from the police on the matter as well. It's been very tough for those of us who've lived on Hoodcroft for years. It's been a very tough struggle with all the driving and the how it is after school. It's very dangerous, all the parking and the walking, and to add even more parking issues, I think is going to cause even more problems in our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak?
Chair, seeing none, rise online.
Chairman, seeing none, rise online, and no more here, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
You have
Oh, when we go to discussion on this.
discussion of the motion to close the public hearing?
No, I said,
Oh,
I
okay,
seconded the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, no. Okay, the public hearing is closed. So at this point, we will ask the presenters to come forward and address the questions from the public, and then we'll turn it over to the board for board questions.
So addressing both Ken and I missed her name, Michelle maybe. Thank you, I apologize. So both related to the parking concerns. I'll let Dennis speak specific to the code, but again, we're looking for this waiver because each family unit, which will have 8 total, typically we push all of our families to have cars. but on average, at most, they're each having one car. This is my understanding of the code, or really the 26 cars calculation, is more for an apartment unit where you're calculating each car per bedroom, where you might have multiple adults or even families within an apartment unit, whereas this is truly one family in each unit, maybe one adult. On average, right now, in the facility, 60% of our parents are single parents. So if you take, 40% of 8 living units, that's roughly 3 of the units. Might have two parents in the unit. Max, again, you might have 2 cars in there. We're still well under, the 14 total spaces that we have when you calculate it out. So, Dennis, in regards to the code, if you want to speak more to that. But overall, our operations, what we're seeing in Nashua is still just the demand is not there for the amount of cars that the code requires. In regards to the street parking, I totally understand. I grew up in Derry. I went to school at Pinkerton. I still go to Shaw's regularly, almost on a daily basis, driving that way through the neighborhood. So I do understand, the parking bans. We spoke to George and the staff beforehand in technical review. Will abide by all the laws and rules related to those. And further, we don't have any overnight visitors. So again, a difference between most apartment units, you might have a guest coming in. More often than not, we don't have guests either coming on site. They have to be approved to come on site. So a lot of the added parking, or I would say non-living cars that are related to the units really aren't there like a typical apartment facility.
The other thing I'd like to point out is that the owners feel this is a very good fit for their program. This facility has been vacant for a while, and it's going to be a challenge to find a viable use that meets all your site requirements, I feel. And I think this is a good use. In our historical data, we're quite comfortable with the parking required without impacting the rest of the neighborhood. The ordinance is the ordinance, and under the interpretation of the staff, we fall under apartments, and the math is the math, and yes, we're under the ordinance, we're required to have the 24 spaces. But I think given this use and the nature of the property, and it's a good fit for us, and we think it's a good fit for Derry.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start off with a couple of follow-up questions on the parking issue. You indicated that on average, there's 1 parent, so I assume that means there's 1 or 2?
Nope, so sorry to clarify, so the statistic I was giving, currently in our Nashua facility, we have about 60% of the families have single parents. So I was just equating that to the parking. If each family has one parent, max, there's going to be 1 car in there because of just the nature of the family. And so if 40% of the 8 units here, I'm just using Nashua numbers here, maybe 3 of the units of the 8 would have potentially 2 cars. But even still, some of the families don't always have, a car per parent. They might only have 1 car per family. And that's largely related to, again, work and services in the area. Given that the location here is related to a lot of services and jobs surrounding, we could see some of the families walking to work or not necessarily needing a car locally.
Well, that was going to be my follow-on question. I'm assuming that in order to graduate from the program and attain, independence, there's some focus on unemployment, right? Mm-hmm. And while there may be walkable employment in Derry, there's not as much as we perhaps would like. So we expect that they're going to be using cars potentially to commute to work. So those families that have 2 parents, would they both be working and potentially both be using cars?
So we push all parents to work, and we also, I don't know the exact number, Pam here may be able to share more info on that, but we also require that each family puts aside money into savings, and again, they're sustaining their own family here. This is not, again, like I mentioned, other facilities where we're kind of just giving them a living space and they can just not go to work. If they're not abiding by our structure and kind of the rules of the program, then unfortunately we might ask them to move on to a different program or somewhere else. So, I mean, that's really the benefit and the value add of our program, the staff, the leadership of Pam and the rest of the staff to really keep this structure in place. One of the reasons why we also don't have individual kitchens and complete living units within each family within the overall facility, and we prefer the communal environment, just so they can be part of a community and kind of be reliant and independent, but also reliant on the community as a whole, so that when they do get back into their own living unit or their own apartment or buy a house, they have that habit in place, those habits in place.
Great. So what percentage of your NACTRA facility and program experience has children?
All of our families have children. We don't require anyone who doesn't have children in our living units.
So given that you really require or at least strongly encourage adults to work, does the program provide some sort of daycare for the children?
No. So there's I believe it's a federal law, McKinney-Vento. So if we're pulling, because not all of our families are necessarily from Derry. We see the demand in Derry to immediately fill, and frankly, the number of units we're proposing isn't even enough to fill the families that we have who would qualify for our program currently. But if they are coming from another school program, there's a federal law that allows transportation provided by the system to come pick them up from our proposed Derry location and bring them to their school district outside of town.
Yeah, sure. That would alleviate the need for additional trips, right? So I'm asking, after school, if all the parents are working and they're on, I presume, tight budgets, that's why they're in transitional housing, does the program assist them with out-of-school childcare?
Yeah, so we don't have in-house childcare. I can maybe let Pam speak more to the day-to-day and hour by hour even as the parents are coming and going, but we do have volunteers that come in regularly. I believe they provide childcare, but and watch the children depending on the time of day. We have individual rooms as well, play areas for the kids, again, rec areas and so forth. So I'm happy to, Pam, if you don't mind speaking more to the day-to-day, that'd be great.
Would they also be eligible for Derry Boys and Girls Club? We have a bus to pick them up?
Potentially. Again, we don't, I'll let her speak to that.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us be here this evening. Our children are all required to be in...
Just introduce yourself for the record, please.
Sorry. Pam Wellman, Executive Director for Family Promise of Southern New Hampshire. All of our children must be in school full-time and must be in daycare. We do have great relationships with Derry Boys and Girls Club, with the YMCAs, with the Nashua Boys and Girls Club. It's a requirement that our children are in after-school programs because we do not provide daycare on site. If families weren't living with us, their children wouldn't be in our daycare. It's not what we do. It's full integration in the community. It's full independence. So that's what our program is and how it's structured. And parents, most of our parents, honestly, are used to that. They like that they have the after-school programs for their children. It's another learning experience. We've got a great relationship with PAL, with the PAL programs, which is a police athletic league, and a lot of our teen kids will go to those programs. But it is a requirement for all families, all parents to be working full-time. We help them resume build and career search. We have scholarship programs so they can get back to school to finish that certification, to advance their professional acumen and make as much money as they possibly can. It's a requirement that we pull their credit first month in. They start working on their credit. They start saving their money, and they get back to work full-time at top professional level as they possibly can. And that's why it takes a year. A year goes by really quickly. But they work hard, and that is the success of the program. I have to address the parking situation. Right now in Nashua, about 30% of our parents own cars. It is a goal of theirs to get their own transportation once again, but they don't all have them. They've been living in their cars with their children when they've been evicted or they've lost their home due to job loss or other situations, life circumstances that none of us truly are above. We might have other resources where they do not. So that's what puts them in this place. I call our families the C students. They're not of specialized populations. They're not of drug misuse, substance misuse, or severe mental health populations where they have benefits that can get them housing. They're not the A students who can afford to sustain themselves after we're all sick of hearing about COVID, but it had a tremendous impact on everything, and it's not getting any better. They don't have the resources where they can sustain their families after all of this. They fall through the cracks, but these are low to middle income working families who are not making a fortune. They can make more money, we help them do that, but that's what caused their homelessness. And that's who Family Promise serves.
Thank you very much for clarifying. That helps. So at this point, I will open it up to questions from members of the board. Mr. Connors.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, I want to understand what we're dealing with here first, based on the questions about the children and the daycare first. My understanding is this is a permitted use. You guys own the building already. The only thing really before this board is the parking. Is that correct, or?
Can we
'cause-
clarify that application?
Sure.
there? Yep, so we're under contract to purchase.
Okay.
This is really like the last domino to fall here, the approval. We did meet with the staff in regards to the prior use, and if that would allow us to, if we needed a variance or not, because we did look at another building in town about a year ago, needed a variance. This is allowed under the code. As Dennis mentioned earlier, our architect, that the building has a deed restriction on it from HUD. With the prior use being financed through HUD, they required it to need a senior living or assisted living facility moving forward, even if it did sell. And our understanding is that that's one of the reasons why it's been so difficult to sell, and that maybe a deal had fallen through in the past. We've worked with HUD. We essentially have an approval from them to use it for the use that we want, because it aligns with their mission, not only locally but nationwide. Our attorney, John Corby from Jermaine and Blaska, locally in town, is working with their attorney to just kind of get the specifics on the deed worked out. But essentially, we have our approval.
Okay.
And we would need our site plan
Okay,
approval.
so I guess it was more of a question up here. Really, our only purview is this parking waiver is what I was asking.
So let me
Not the use of the
elucidate.
building.
This is what we call in our regulations a site plan determination. State law allows us to waive full-scale site plan review when the circumstance just doesn't merit all of those studies and all that formality. But we are approving the determination and the information that is presented tonight is part of a binding approval. So there is more than the parking waiver. We will be approving the small-scale site plan.
Okay, all right, so parking, I just wanted to, thank you, Mr. Chair. The parking situation, 14 spaces, I guess one of the things that you're saying is you approve or decide who comes into your facility, and you're gonna have 8 units, right? Just to clarify, the gentleman mentioned 24 spaces, just so we're all on the record, 25.5 is the actual calculation of how many spaces you technically are required. So just want to make sure that's clear. It's 25 and a half, not 24. You're 14. My point is, 8 units, you're saying that some of them are going to be, do you have any control over saying, so that you can meet the 14 spaces, to say, some of these are families with 2 cars, and some of the apartments will only be single-car apartments, because you control who comes in. So therefore, you could control the fact that 6 of them are single car and 4, or whatever the mix is, so that you meet the 14. Do you have that wherewithal, or do you have to accept and then they can get 2 cars if they get 2 cars? Or I would think if I'm renting someone an apartment, I can say you only have 1 parking space, that's it. So don't you have that control in order to meet 14 spaces or not?
So legally, and Pam can, again, expand on how she goes through the application process, but This might help. Like, we don't take Section 8 vouchers, and we don't take other funding that requires us to lease to certain people. So overall, my understanding is, like, we have discretion to bring in who we want and the families we want. As I mentioned earlier, we have, if someone's not a fit for the program, we can divert them to other programs based on, you know, what the current situation in the house is with all the families, the family dynamics, and that's why Pam and the staff are so good, because they do take those things into account.
Right. And I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm seeing you guys be able to govern this by saying, we're going to have a certain number of single parent people in and two parents so that you can do the 14. Regardless of that, Coburn Road, I don't know if Owen wants to bring up the map or not. The question I have is, you're next to Valley Nursing Home, and I don't know if it's legal parking or not, but if you bring up the map, when I Google map it right now, the Valley Nursing Home appears to have a bunch of parking where they just kind of park on the side of Coburn Road, half on the grass and half on the road. The gentleman from 14 Coburn, it looks like you have a parking space out on the road as well. When you Google Earth map it, I mean, there's a bunch of cars up here to the left. What is that? You know, see what I'm saying on Coburn there? They just appear to be parked on the grass and dirt. There's a red truck over here in front of Coburn. So is that on-street parking? Is that allowed on Coburn anyway? And what is the concern, I guess?
So our understanding is that we were told no street parking.
No street parking, okay.
So our calculation on the site and what we're applying for is what we believe is, you know, enough for what we
Right.
need.
So is what they're doing over here on Valley, is that legal? It doesn't appear to be a parking lot that we approved. Mark, maybe you know. Is that just because they have too much parking, so they created this little dirt area there where they're parking all these cars? Is that legal parking? Because, again, fair is fair, I guess, is what I'm just trying to get at is, yeah, so.
Excuse me,
I'm asking, yeah, our planning department.
yeah,
folks
so,
knows.
members of the public, hello. The public hearing is closed. This is the time for board to ask questions. If you have questions, hold them. If they don't get answered during the board's questioning, we may decide to reopen for public comment, but right now, public hearing is closed.
Okay.
Yeah, your public hearing is closed.
But I'm asking the
Public
planning
hearing is
director.
closed.
or the-
Thank you, ma'am.
yeah. It's okay. I'm just putting that out there. It appears to me that from looking and going over there and checking the site out, there is some on-street parking and things going on. I don't know. If it's not allowed, it's not allowed. Like I said, I think you can meter it. My other point was, you're not too far from the back of Shaw's. You're a nonprofit organization. Is there any discussion where you could, you know, work your parking out with them for extra cars, that sort of thing, donations? I'm just looking for solutions here.
We haven't explored that option because, again, frankly, we feel like what we're proposing is sufficient for what we're doing.
Okay.
The last thing we want to do is come into the neighborhood and
Yeah.
kind of do what other people are doing and
Right.
upsetting the neighborhood. What we
Right.
did, to give you
Understood.
some insight to our process, similar to what we did with the Holy Cross building, we met with the neighborhood months ago for them to be able to voice their concerns. I think we had like 30 to 35 of the residents, including some who are here, so we appreciate them, you know, showing interest and then again coming tonight. Overall, we had a lot of good feedback. The parking's a valid concern.
Yep.
We
It is.
just feel like we're meeting what we need to do.
Okay, one other question. If you look at the nursing home parking, if you zoom in a little bit on that, Owen, maybe you looked at this, your architect probably did. They have angled parking in their parking lot there. Did you guys look at being able to get more spaces by doing angled versus parallel parking? Is that something you already did? I assume so. Okay, so there's no additional parking to be gained by doing angle parking around your, okay, all right, thank you.
Excuse me.
So, yeah, those are just my observations and thoughts on it. But to me, in a transitional housing where you're kind of renting an apartment, my guess is you could probably control it where you're only going to have 14 cars because you just don't rent to, you know, you don't have everybody, all 8 units don't be two parent families at one time, and then you're avoiding the problem. But
May I make a point too about the units? There are 8 units available for the families, and then there's one overnight staff unit. We can't predict the configuration of families, so we're saying 8 units, 8 families. However, each 2 units are separated by a double hotel door. It's a model that we adopted in Nashua. If we have a mom with 4 children, we're not going to stick them into 2 rooms. That double hotel door opens and she gets an extra room or 2 extra rooms. So we're saying up to 8 cars.
right, okay.
But it doesn't, we've got families right now in Nashua, there's a family with 6 children, you know, 1 car.
Yeah, understood. Understood. And I think, the other thing that I hearken back to, just for the board, I mean, we just dealt with this down a lot of the apartments that were on, not South Main, the ones where they had a problem parking on the road because the apartments were approved prior to this where they didn't have enough parking. So they did do one spot per apartment. And then people were parking on the road by the golf course there, and we just made that all no parking. Those people have found other places to park. So to some degree, that's more of a market rate apartment situation where a lot of people do have two cars. To me, I would be, we're not voting yet, but to me, I think this is manageable, and it's not necessarily going to be the big problem if it was market rate apartments, because they have some control over who they are bringing into their program. So that's my point. Thank you.
All right, other,
Is it possible to, I wasn't too familiar with the Vintage Grace model before, but there was 4 pods of 4 units previously, 16 units technically. I don't know did each person have their own car there?
No, I'd been in that building when it was Vintage Grace, because we had gotten a community development block grant for them many years ago to help them do their kitchen over and some exterior work. It was a combination of, don't hold me to I think there were 4 apartments. They were like 1 bedrooms, mostly older people, disabled. Then it was adult daycare. You had you'd come in for the day, get dropped off, get picked up at the end of the day. And you had staff there. So it was a little bit different, but there were, maybe the neighbors can help out, but I think some of the people just didn't drive any longer. I do know we have that public transit, the cart service buses that you see. I do know they used to go to Vintage Grace to pick people up. It's a public transportation agency that we have in town. So I think there was probably a little bit more parking back then when Vintage Grace was there, and then you had Crutch and Mountain Rehab back there too, way back in the 80s when I started here. So I think Mark's point, if I may, and with respect to the neighbors, because I agree, I live just up the street at Sunview. I cut through here all the time to go through the Shaws and the back ways. And what we tell people, if there's issues with on-street parking, we have a highway safety committee that looks at that. And like Mark alluded to, it's a little different on Broadway near the golf course. Those are market rate apartments. And up Chester Road, as you go near the Chase's Mill on the right, at Hillside, people were parking on both sides of the road. The residents went to the Highway Safety Committee, and they recommended limiting the parking on both the rotary as you get toward Chase's Mill on the left and the right, as well as along Broadway near the golf course. You can't park there anymore. That might help separately from what we're doing on this, if you see some of those cars parked in some of those other areas.
And if it's an issue for the Pinkerton kids and stuff, yeah, that's what I'm
I mean,
thinking.
I live at Sunview condos, we have kids that park in the Sunview condos, and we've had to put signs up that you'll be towed because the kids were parking in the private property and walking over to the school. So I understand what you're going through.
That's what they do in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
In our yards.
Yep.
The parents pull U-turns in our properties, like I've witnessed, in our properties.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Okay, so anyway, Mr.
yeah, so I think Mr. Soros has a good suggestion. There are other remedies available in town to deal with those kinds of problems. But in terms of the facts we need to determine to decide whether we're going to approve this plan, we can't be addressing off-site, misbehavior by other unrelated parties. We can't allow that to cloud these particular discussions.
Mr. Chair, one other question before, and then I'm done. So for the architect or for Mark or whoever, so you've got basically a sidewalk to nowhere that seems to wrap around on the front side of this building on Coburn there, kind of, because there's no other sidewalks in the neighborhood. I went again over there and checked. Is there any reason why that area there can't become, 4 or 5 spaces of parking? Have you guys looked at that? Is that septic? Is there some problem with using that? I mean, but again, the neighbors probably don't want a concrete, parking everywhere. It's nice to have some grass and open space. So, but again, looking at that, is there a reason why that could not be additional parking?
There is a drainage.
I'm sorry, sir.
On that corner.
So I was going to mention drainage, but then also fire access, and you're just getting into a lot
Okay,
more
just-
site plan.
exactly.
Thank
Maybe
you.
my
Okay.
Mark-
Thank you. Just wanted to ask the question.
Reduce green space, it's already a very
Okay, thank you.
developed.
Any other questions from members of the board?
Chairman, seeing no other questions, I'm going to move ahead with what's in front of us based on the recommendation of the Planning Department. First motion is to grant the waiver to LDCR Section 17063C 4A to allow the 14 parking spaces where the 26 are required. This use represents transitional housing for the families with a historical count of 1 car per family. After review of the waiver request, the board finds that strict conformity to the regulations will pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, seconded by Mr. Myers. Is there discussion? If not, I'll take the vote. Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. McEachran? Mr. Connors?
Yes for the waiver.
Mr. Malamy?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to, the second motion, finding of facts. The board finds the application as presented this evening qualifies for site plan determination, and a formal site plan application is not required for the redevelopment of this site, as the site is being minimally altered from the previous use as Vintage Grace. The board finds the proposed plan provides safe, efficient vehicular and pedestrian access, and the design and construction of the access ways, walkways are adequate to accommodate the anticipated volume of traffic proposed by the development. Board further finds the proposed parking plan is adequate for the site and meets the parking density requirements for uses noted in the waiver above, already approved this evening.
Second.
So motion by Mr. McEachran, seconded by Mr. Myers to make a set of findings of fact. Any discussion? Poll the board. Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. McEachran?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Malamy?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. My last is to approve this plan pursuant to the following. LDCR 17051, site plan determination. Plan approved, subject to owner's signature, subject to on-site inspection by town engineer. Establishment of appropriate escrow is required to complete the project. Note the approved waivers on the plan. Obtain written approval from the planning director or designee. GIS disc is received and is operable and complies with LDCR 17061C, subject to receipt of applicable state and local permits relating to the project, and that all conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months.
Second.
Motion by McEachran, seconded by Myers to grant conditional approval. Any discussion? And I will poll the board. Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. McEachran?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Good night.
thank you all very much.
I know before, but we gotta get to ask any questions here, because we have explanations where the cars are. And I have a question about where their kids are gonna play. There's nowhere to put a swing set or anything. Not that that's the issue, parking.
So I'm going to suggest that, given that the formal hearing is over, if the presenters or applicants are willing to stay behind for a few minutes, that they could go in the training room behind this room with the local abutters and other interested parties and maybe get some of these questions answered.
Well, I would have liked to answer his question while you guys were all discussing it about the car. Because the cars are in my yard, my driveway. They're not on the street.
Are they on the subject property that we're discussing?
They're on my own.
Well,
You can call the police and
yeah,
have
so
them towed.
we don't have, the planning board doesn't have any enforcement authority of that. I'm sorry.
Oh, you mean that,
I would call the police department, I would deal with the Highway Safety Committee. There are enforcement agencies in the town that will enforce.
I would just like to let you know, sir, I'm sorry. I would just like to let you know, sir, that I called the police department twice last school year because somebody was parked in my driveway. And the police department told me they had better things to do.
All right, I would escalate that
That's what we're dealing
to the town administrator if I were you.
yeah, go to town council meeting if that happens, go to town council meeting, tell them.
Even the police have bosses.
I understand, and I called the station and I was told the same thing. Well, we may get to it, but we do have better things to do.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that anyone in town would tell a resident that.
I felt the same way.
But the planning board does not have any authority to fix that for you, is what I'm telling you.
I think that
So,
everybody needs to understand the frustration that you all are just automatically taking the
So all police calls are
I
recorded.
understand your frustration. I would suggest that if you want something to happen,
Yeah.
go to the town council, go to the town administrator. If you just want to vent your frustration, I understand that, but we're not going to be able to, like, address it or make any changes that will fix it. It's just not in our power.
And all police calls are recorded, and if that actually happened to you, note the date and the time and go talk to the chief, because they can pull up the recording, and if that actually happened, well, then I would suggest you get the date and the time and go talk to him, because that would not be acceptable, I doubt, to our police chief, so.
When it happened, I actually called here and I complained and I flipped out. And nothing, I never heard back from anybody.
Okay, it's not, the planning board has nothing to do with that, though, I'm saying, so, sorry.
I'm just trying to get you to understand the frustration that we understand that you guys are trying to say just call this or just call that. But when we do, we get no help.
And it's not just that, it's
So that's why
Thank
there's a concern.
I understand your concern, and if you want to actually fix it, I suggest you go up the chain of command, go to the town administrator, go to the town council. There's an open session on the beginning of every town council meeting where you can air these kinds of concerns. And those people do have authority to do something about it.
I have a question. So they got approved tonight, and they got approved for parking for one car each, is the way I'm understanding it, and I could be wrong. But when they need more parking, she and I are saying they should have all the parking they need before they even start working in that building. Because they're gonna have people in there and nowhere to put the cars.
Mr. Soros, can you help us with this? I mean, if it becomes a major problem, I'm assuming we can revisit this with a condition compliance hearing. So you said it would be X and now it's Y. So there are recourses, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it tonight because it's somewhat speculative as to who's going to live there.
They've been approved for 14 spaces. If Coburn Road is not posted as no parking, they can park on the road just like you can park on the road. If you don't, if that becomes a problem, as George said, you go to the Highway Safety Committee and petition to have no parking signs put on Coburn Road, and if they find that it warrants it, they will do that for you. But as of now, the people who live there are going to have the same rights as everybody else in the neighborhood to park. So if you can park on the road, they can park on the road.
No problem with the people that live in there. I have a problem with the parking.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's a Highway Safety Committee issue. Parking is a highway safety thing.
No parking signs and they still park.
Hey, folks.
Point of order,
We need to get on with our meeting.
Point of order, could we get on with the meeting? I'd move the next question, please. Point of order.
Are you done with us? Is that it?
That plan has been dismissed. We need to go on to the next applicant because we can't stay here all night.
And why we're invited.
Well, I know, I was just thinking that. I don't know why.
I honestly have no idea why we were invited here, if there was like nothing. Like,
And you
I
don't want to open up for more questions. Like,
It was just to sit here and listen to you guys babble, but there was like nothing.
yeah, let's do it.
I have no idea why we were invited here. It was really ridiculous.
Railroad it, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got their property, but we got their cars.
All right. Can we move on to the next item on the agenda, please?
Please.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm
You're
going
all
to do...
alone now.
Thanks for staying. Are you one of the owners of the properties? Are you one of the owners of the next plan? Are you one of the owners? The abutters, okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll give a quick staff review. Owen, do we have Tim Peliquin? Tim told me he's had dental surgery and he's going to Zoom in tonight. In case there's any questions, he's at home, he can't drive. So,
Well, this ought to be interesting.
Does he have a mouth full of gauze? Are we going to be able to understand him?
I don't want to speak for Tim, but it's public record. He had a root canal, he told me today, so he's at home.
Tell Tim we got
Tim.
lots of questions on this sight line, on this lot line adjustment. Lots of questions, Tim.
Okay, all right, I will do a quick staff, and then Tim, and you're in Zoom land, so, real quick, Mr. Chairman, the applicant on board, planning board, the applicants are Scott and Stephanie Shively, or Shively, Carl and Michelle Cleary. Property's located at 7 and 5 Gulf Road. The purpose of the plan is a lot line adjustment between the two parcels. We don't need town signatures or department signatures for lot line changes. There's a whole bunch of waivers, which makes sense that we don't require them for Topo, soils and mapping, wetland, drainage calcs, lot size calcs, complete boundary. We don't require them for, say, lot line changes. There are no state permits. Staff would recommend approval of both the waiver request and the lot line adjustment plan. Excuse me, Tim Pelican, the surveyor, is here in Zoom land. If there's any questions, this is pretty straightforward.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to accept jurisdiction.
Second.
The lot line adjustment plan before the board for Scott and Stephanie Shively and Kyle and Michelle Cleary, PID 031627 Gulf Road and PID 031615 Gulf Road.
Moved by McEachran, seconded by Connors.
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Mr. Chairman, I'm also going to make a determination of regional impact is not required for lot line adjustments.
Anyone have any agita with that? Okay.
Nope.
Requirement waived.
And then I'm going to say, I'm going to move to open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Right. Moved and seconded to open the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any members of the public would like to address this plan?
Come on up. This is your chance to shine.
I was just curious as to what was going on as an abutter. I don't think it'll affect me, but I was doing my due diligence.
So, do you want to just explain what it is so she understands?
I can
Tim,
jump
do you
in.
want to take that one since they're your client? Oh, you can talk, okay.
I can talk. I am still numb though, so forgive me. Check this out. I get my appointment for a root canal emergency today was at 2:30. You can't make this stuff up.
2:30.
This is the old dentist joke, right? So basically, there's one lot, both these lots are equal area adjustments. One is 35.5 acres, one is 3 acres. They're gonna stay the same at the end. Just the back of the lot at 5 Gulf Road, there's a small section taken out for the benefit of the folks at 7 Gulf Road, where they're given a little bit more ample building area for any future expansion, such as a detached garage, I believe is their intention. There's wetlands to the back, quite a bit of wetlands, and this area that is selected, that was an agreement between 7 and 5 Gulf Road, is an area that is upland. So by doing that lot line adjustment of approximately 0.35 acres, they're exchanging a 0.35 acres in the back of 5 Gulf Road for a parcel A and a parcel B as it shows on the plan. So relatively simple. They're large lots. Well, one lot is 35.5 acres, the other's 3 acres. They both don't violate zoning. You really can't see it from any neighbor's house that I know, or from what I viewed. It's well wooded to the back, as this particular lot, 7 Gulf Road, sits to the back. So I don't know if that helps alleviate the abutter's concern, but just so she's aware, it's towards the back at 7 Gulf Road.
Okay, I'm at 78 Hillray, so I think.
Oh, I see.
The end of my
I got you.
woods abuts the back of theirs. And since nothing really is changing, that really doesn't affect me at all.
Yeah, and I would say, sorry to jump in, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay. I should have waited for her to say everything, but I will just say that the 35.5 acre parcel is a large lot, so there's a lot of abutters. And as I can see, she's a little bit further away from this small, 1/3 of an acre lot line adjustment.
Did you have any other questions, ma'am?
Is there anyone online? Owen, anyone raising their hand? Okay,
Seeing no
then.
one online and the lady here not asking any more questions, I'm going to move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Public hearing is closed.
I am making motions. I guess, Mark, before I make the motion waivers, you got a question?
Nope, if it's a motion waive, good.
I'm going to make a motion to grant the waivers. Move to grant the following waivers from the following sections of LDCR, as both existing lots conform to zoning ordinances, have existing dwellings, wells, individual surface disposal systems, and there's no further development at this time is being proposed. With this application, the costs associated with fulfilling regulations listed below is unnecessary. Ready? LDCR Section 17024A4. And I'll just read the numbers. LDCR Section 17024A11. LDCR Section 17024A12. LDCR Section 17024A13. LDCR Section 17024A14. Last but not least, LDCR Section 17025B. Because after review of the waiver request, board finds this strict conformity to the regulations would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation.
Second.
It's been motioned by Mr. McEachran, seconded by Mr. Myers to grant the list of requested waivers. Any discussion? Mr. Connors.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and Tim, just where I was trying to pull up the GIS system, just where the lady in the audience did ask the question, she feels she abuts back from Kilray. I'm not seeing exactly where she abuts, trying to pull it up. Obviously, looking forward, there's no development now. It's kind of like my usual question, though. You mentioned 35 acres. I guess since she's here, since she asked the question, is this being done for any kind of additional subdivision?
You can't really ask that as a binding question.
Informational question, just again, if she owns the property and it's going to affect her, I think she's owed a straight answer if there is some sort of development that this is being asked for, I guess. But if that's not allowed, that's not allowed. I know Tim sometimes will answer those, sometimes he won't, so.
Yeah, well, they may change their mind, so.
Well, I'll jump in just because it's rather simple. In that, no, there's an existing house, well, septic, and minimum frontage already. Actually, don't quote me on the minimum frontage because it does not have sufficient frontage on Gulf Road, but it must have frontage elsewhere because this is a large lot. But there's only one house, well, septic on that lot, and I believe that's all that can be. We're not subdividing the land. Just parcel A where it's being, if you can see that on the plan in front of you, that area is just a little bit of an area where the folks at 7 Gulf Road can expand a little bit in terms of a detached garage, and I believe that's their only intention at this time, so I can state that.
Thank you, Tim.
Any other discussion? Not, we'll take a vote. Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. McEachran.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malvey.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion on the finding of facts, move that the proposed plan does not alter the existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood remains unchanged as a result of the lot line adjustment. I wish to approve pursuant to RSA 67643.
Two separate votes.
Oh, two separate. Stop.
Finding the facts first.
Finding of facts. Just need a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Mr. Myers. I'm going to poll the board. Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. McEachran.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Malvey.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Chair votes yes.
And Mr. Chairman, my last motion is to approve pursuant to RSA 67643, expedited review with the following conditions: subject to owner's signature, subject to on-site inspection by town engineer, establishment of escrow for setting of bounds and certification bonds have been set. Note all approved waivers in the plan, obtain written approval from the planning director or his designee that the GIS disk is received, operable, and complies with LDCR section 1702414C. Conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months. Submission of the appropriate recording fees payable to Rockingham County Registry of Deeds to include the $25 L-chip fee, recording fees for Mylar, and notice of decision.
Second.
Moved by McCarkin, seconded by Myers. Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. McEachran.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Maloney.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
And chair votes yes.
To adjourn.
All right, do we have any other business or comments?
Mr. Chair? Yeah, so I think as some know, I'm not sure what the process is, and I know we're a little short maybe on bodies, so I want to let everyone know my house goes on the market tomorrow. I'm going to be moving out of town probably. I don't know how soon. I'll stay on the board until I'm ready to go. But if we do have alternates and you wanted to reseat someone so they can jump in, that's fine. Don't know what the process is, but just wanted to give the board a heads up. That, you know, probably in the next at least 30 to 60 days, if everything goes according to plan, I'll probably be moving on and therefore not be able to be on the board any longer. So just wanted to put that out there, and you guys let me know if we have enough bodies or we need to recruit or whatever, so.
So I'll follow that up to indicate that we have only one alternate on our roster today who has a very busy work schedule and is not often able to come to meetings. So we need to recruit some new alternates, and there is a process by which you go to the town's website and you fill out a volunteer application form. You send it to Sheila Bodenrader, who's the administrator's executive assistant, and then it gets considered by the town council. So we do need to deepen our bench. So anyone who has an interest in serving on the board, seeing all the fun we have, I welcome you to submit your applications.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just follow what Mark said, if board members can let me know if you can't make it, which everybody's pretty good, either email me or call me, just saying you can't make the meeting, but like Randy Chase, couldn't make it, but he said if we were short tonight, I could call him at home. If we're short and I know ahead of time, I could call you, Mark, and say, hey.
Yeah, I'll
make the
continue to attend until I'm actually moving.
Yeah,
So
okay.
when we have another meeting in September, I'll probably be here for that. I just wanted to get advance
Okay.
notice, not just be like, oh, tonight's my last night, guys.
Well, given the housing market, Mark, you should probably sell, given this housing
It
market,
may
I
happen
would think
fast.
pretty well.
So
I don't want to leave you hanging, that's all. It's been a
Okay, I
pleasure.
appreciate that, thank you.
for the board members to be clear, the town charter is very clear that to fill an existing position has to come from the alternates list. So somebody, if the individual that you are talking about is unable to attend and doesn't feel he or she can fill the position, we would have to seat alternates first. and then
Yeah,
vote
if
for
it
the
wasn't clear,
alternates.
that's kind of what I was suggesting, is that we try to fill, we have 2 empty alternate positions, and if we could fill those, that would be wonderful.
Correct. That's the problem.
I have spoken to John Morrison, not recently, but John still is interested in the board. He's working down in Boston weekends, he's straight out. He does elevator repair work down the city, like in the big, tall skyscrapers. He still wants to be involved, but works, it's booming down in Boston, it's keeping him real busy 7 days a week.
Mr. Chairman, no other concerns, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying goodbye.
Goodbye. No, I want to stay.
Andy, I need you to sign something.